We bring in Mike Rezendes. He won a Pulitzer as a member of the Boston Globe Spotlight team, which, of course, uncovered a similar pattern of sex abuse within the Catholic Church in Boston. Michael, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, you look at this and you think, okay, this is Pennsylvania. It doesn't even include Philadelphia, but it's, greater Pennsylvania. But the sense is that every state in America could have a report like this if they looked into it. Is that the case?
I think that's absolutely true. I think if there were an attorney general in every major city in America that wanted to investigate this, they would find pretty much the same thing. The story is the same, whether it's Boston or Pennsylvania or Tucson or Los Angeles or Ireland,
globally.
Yeah.
Ireland, Australia, Chile. It's the same. The depravity is the same. The criminality is the same. And the cover-up's the same.
Talking about the cover-up, what I found among the most sickening details in this is that there was a cover-up, almost a playbook that the church hierarchy followed.
Yeah, the grand jury talks about that. They said it had several steps, including, first of all, you didn't talk about the specifics of what happened, the crimes. Instead, you referred to it as horseplay or wrestling, so you diminished it. Then when the priests were moved out of the parish, you didn't tell the parishioners why the priest was gone. He just disappeared. And then most of all, they said the rule was don't go to the police.
Well,
and that enabled this to remain a secret from the parishioners and to enable the church to do what it wanted with those priests.
I was surprised to see that some of the priests went and kind of confessed. And you thought at that moment maybe something would be done, but no.
The other thing I think to keep in mind is that many of these crimes happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when our understanding of child abuse was much different than it is today. Back then the church treated child abuse almost like alcoholism. We'll send him away for 6 to 8 weeks and he'll be better. Now they understand very clearly it is a crime and it must be reported to police.
Mike, let's talk about Pope Francis, because, of course, a lot of Catholics, especially in this country, have been feeling really good about this Pope. However, is he doing enough with regard to these victims and some of the behavior of the Catholic Church in terms of a cover-up?
I think all the survivors would say emphatically, no, he has not done enough. And this issue has the potential to mar Francis's legacy forever. He has not come to grips with this issue. 16 years after the Boston Globe Spotlight team report, the Vatican has done very, very little. A blue ribbon commission has been appointed. There have been promises to hold bishops accountable, but really, in a very substantive way, nothing has been done.
Can you believe it? Because 16 years ago was when you wrote your first story for the Boston Globe.
Exactly. I mean, I think the time is long past, as far as the survivors are concerned, for the Vatican to take some action.
Mike Rezendes and Thompson, both who've covered this story a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.